Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the lefts, we go up to the rights, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, June the 18th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, we are a family-friendly podcast. At least we try to be. But sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, aside from being on God's hot plate, some news that we do have to go into. And I do mean news because, again, guys, you keep hearing me say all the time, we are in a midterm election year. We are less than 3 months away, 3 months and counting from the midterms to where the Democrats will try to hold on to their slim majority in Congress, while the Republicans, who have literally done nothing this entire session of Congress, will try to disrupt that. As I said before, guys, Democrats will have a harder time convincing voters considering the lack of promises kept and the lack of W's on the board to help the American people. Now, unless you were Ukraine or unless you were Abbott or you were any other type of corporation that actually got funding, you would see it differently. As for the rest of us, we've only gotten one stimulus check, and that's been pretty much it. I have been saying this for the longest time that, again, Democrats will have the hardest time because you're asking people to go back, people who are hurting, who are trying to make ends meet, whose pay increases have not been made, minimum wage has not been met, the George Floyd police reform bill is dead, the Build Back America plan is pretty much on flatline. Oh, and the Voting Rights Act that never came to be was also killed along with the John Lewis Act, which was also dead. But you did get through a one budget. In the Democrats' case, hey, at least y'all came together and did a post COVID-19 anti-hate bill for Asian Americans. So, bravo there, I guess. But again, Democrats are going to have a harder time. But in the sense of Republicans, who basically are depending on idiots with short-term memories to vote for them again, because they think that the party of so-called small government is really bullshit, considering the fact they're using government to basically put everybody on the same ruling as they are. Some Republicans believe because they're Christian theology that they are morally superior to others and know better and will make sure that everybody under federal law understands that. Of course, when federal law is applied to them, they claim that they're being prosecuted and seen as targets. Why am I saying all this? Not because of the fact that you should be informed, because the fact there are GOP congressional candidates out there who, instead of actually trying to attract minority voters, are saying the same exact talking points that you will heard on Fox News. I am talking about this gentleman here, Carl Paolino, who is a congressional candidate for New York, has sat there and said, and I quote, Black Americans were being kept dumb and hungry so they could be conditioned to only vote for the Democratic Party, also quoting that you can't teach them differently. And for all those that think he's been misquoted,
I'm just saying, why not go to your third and fourth question and also connect it to the dots? I mean, the point here is that you were a racist yesterday before anyone read this list. Rod Watson, everyone in the Buffalo News, they haven't been fair to you. They haven't given you a fair shake. Every time you say something, you're a bigoted racist. So today, you're an extra bigoted racist.
You see, I don't think of myself in any way as a racist. Okay, I go out there and I've been fighting for a few years now for 34,000 kids in our school district. I can't get the Black leadership to adopt policies that would help those kids. I mean, basic logic that if you have competition in the marketplace, if you have charter schools, more charter schools, if you have vouchers, you have tax credits, and give these kids real choice, they might get educated. Really basic suggestions on issues of that nature. And all I've felt was pushback, and because they don't have anything valid to say or fight back on those issues, they call me a racist, they call me a sexist, they call me all kinds of names. I've come to learn how not to let that bother me. because the greater good is that someday somebody like a Donald Trump is going to come in and force that stuff on them, okay? And maybe then, okay, we'll get some change, because the black people deserve better. They shouldn't be held captive in our inner cities. They shouldn't be held hungry and dumb, okay, so as to provide a base for the Democratic Party. That's what's been going on. You can't teach them differently because they've been so conditioned to think that way. And that is so wrong. And I'll fight for that stuff until the day I die.
Let me ask you a question. You know the way.
Like I said, you can't make that up. And it's amazing when I say this all the time. It is amazing when I hear certain things like that, where, oh, well, the black people, and trust me, he's not the only person that said that. Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, all the conservative media darlings have all said the same thing. And even some quote unquote black people have said it. Diamond and Silk, those 1776 twins, and Jesse Peterson, if memory serves you right, all have sat there and said the same thing. We are conditioned. We're on the Democratic plantation. We know nothing better than to vote blue because red has such great interest. The party of the GOP, the red team, has so many black interests at heart. As you just literally heard him sit there and say, well, public school's in the trash, but if we actually allowed competition in education, that's the conservatives' mindset. There has to be competition in everything. If we allow competition in the quote-unquote free market of education, then your child will have a better education. Ignoring the fact that maybe public education has been in the toilet since the early 80s, that the fact that you guys have switched to standardized testing and Common Core, especially in the South, has not helped to actually increase graduation rates, but has increased dropout rates. At the same time, college admissions are down across the board, but you don't want to talk about that. But you want to say, well, we introduced charter schools and tax credits and all, everything else except addressing the problem of education. But it's amazing. He says, well, I tried this with the blacks, but the blacks didn't like me. You just sat there and said you basically brought them a pipe dream and expected them to go, oh, thank you, Mr. GOP person. We would have never thought of this. I only wish we could have addressed the public education issue without actually building stuff and trying to take away from it. Because that's what it is. They do all these charter schools, things of that nature, things that don't require federal funding, but they take it away from public education. So if you take that funding from public education and put it to charter schools, I wonder what happens to public education schools. That's right. They go under or become overcrowded or lose teachers because they're not paying teachers enough or not giving the school staff everything that's required for them to actually teach. Because again, for the party of the GOP, they don't look at education as a great and honored profession. They look at it as a job that you can get at any fast food place. That's how they view education. Even more so that he's not the only one that considers black people being on the Democratic plantation. And I say this all the time. There's a historical reference to this when he says, well, black people are just conditioned to be poor and hungry. Well, here's the problem with being poor. Here's the problem with that assumption. The GOP, for every Republican nomination, has actually voted against programs to actually help the middle and lower class. Have actually voted against that. So that's why it was one of those things where I sit there and go, you should have paid attention. Because it's amazing. They voted against social programs, social and economic programs that would actually help not only African American people but other minorities. They actually voted against looking into reparations, which again is one thing I was going to bring up later since we're in the area of Juneteenth. That again, it's one of those things where I sit there and I say, it's amazing how they say that the black people are stuck on the Democratic plantation, but historically they have voted against anything that could have helped African Americans. I mean, aside from, and they always love to say this, well, Lincoln freed the slaves. Yeah, let's not go into the whole point that he did this out of goodness out of his heart. He did that to disrupt the South. So, they always love to sit there and say, well, the Republicans is the party of Lincoln who emancipated the slaves. Oh, that's what you're going to hang on to. That's still not going to work. But to say that we're on a Democratic plantation, yes. Have there been more? Have the Democrats and Republican parties changed sides or priorities since the Civil War? Yes, obviously. But the social and economic programs, the actual bills that are put in place, the fact that if you take into fact civil rights, women's suffrage, same sex marriages, interracial marriages, which again Republicans voted against, Democrats voted for. So this is the point I'm making. It's like it's amazing they keep on saying we're stuck on the Democratic plantation, while you're sitting there saying, "Well, we tried to help you, by you just wouldn't do what we wanted you to do." It's kind of like having a slave owners mentality, isn't it? I mean, if you're a congressional Republican, but that's the way they feel. And again, it never ceases to amaze me that that's the way they're thinking. That well, you're just going to vote Democrat. You know what? I've said it best, and I'll say it again before we move on to the next story. It's not always Democrat versus Republican. I mean, yes, I've yet to run into a Republican that actually gives bright ideas, but at the same time, there are a lot of progressive Democrats and there's too many modern ones, too many moderate ones. Moderate Democrats is Republican light, which means that there are a majority of conservative things that they do go for, but very little things that they disagree with. But unfortunately, those guys are in the Senate. A lot more progressive Democrats are actually in the House that are trying to get bills passed through that the Senate will not go off of. It's not always Manchin and Sinema, but they're two great examples of what moderate Democrats really are. So again, to say we're on the Democratic plantation is a cop out, because if there's candidates out there that you really want to see on the docket, then push them, vote for them, endorse them. Because yes, until Citizens United is actually overturned, that money is going to be flowing into politics. But understand this, guys, your vote matters a lot. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be throwing everything, changing all these laws, changing the way mail-in voting or drop-in ballot voting is done. They would not be changing all these things if your vote didn't matter. Simple fact of the matter, that's the reason why the January 6 hearings are going on, because we're basically trying to sit there and say in so many words, yes, Donald Trump tried to do a coup. Even though it's kind of obvious, but hey, I get it. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this next story because, again, gun violence seems to be happening, and even at church, as we've known since Dylan Roof and his issue at a South Carolina Baptist church. Now there's been another shooting at Alabama church. I'm telling you guys, it's getting worse because of the fact that gun laws are still untouched.
Small group meeting that might have been a monthly potluck dinner at this Episcopal church turned from fun to fatal in a matter of seconds.
Multiple people down.
Thursday evening, gunfire tearing through St. Stephen's, leaving 2 dead, 1 injured, and this quiet community shaken.
We are getting a report of a possible active shooter.
Police say the gunman entered the church and started firing. So far, authorities have not revealed a motive for the attack, but say first responders were able to end it quickly.
The suspect is in custody. I would like to reiterate that there is no threat to the community at this time.
Officials have not publicly identified the shooter or said what kind of weapon was used.
Considered probably one of the safest neighborhoods in the area.
Quite alarming that something like this would happen.
Overnight, Alabama's governor reacting to the incident, calling it a shocking and tragic loss of life. The violent attack coming on the heels of ongoing negotiations on Capitol Hill, as a bipartisan group of senators tries to hammer out the most significant gun legislation in a generation following horrific mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde. The final hurdle, closing the so-called boyfriend loophole that still allows dating partners convicted of domestic abuse to own guns. Back in Alabama, parishioners relying on their faith to get through.
This is something we're going to need a lot of love and take care of each other.
One person remains in the hospital this morning. Their condition is unclear. Now, we are expecting an update from police in a matter of hours who may be able to clarify who committed this deadly act and why. Craig.
And I hate to say this because it's starting to become the norm. It's starting to become the norm that we're seeing a lot more of these shootings happen, which again happens that it's like not even no place is sacred now. But again, it goes back to those gun laws I keep talking about. Yes, we're going to keep talking about them because the more that these gun laws need to be talked about, the less those situations, those tragic events can stop from happening. For again, it amazes me so that there are some people that should not, above all else, have firearms. And this is coming from a person that owns firearms. I am a firearm owner. I do own guns, but there has to be a level to where you have to be responsible, and if you are beyond the point of not being responsible anymore, then you need to give them up. Or if you fall into certain categories, like domestic violence, for example, or have a history of it, give it up. Or if you or the fact that states need to have red flag laws. Again, states should be able to go in there and remove somebody's guns if they are deemed a threat. There's nothing wrong with that. I am all for that. But again, this is the reason why we keep talking about gun laws. The reason why we need to go ahead and institute this stuff. Now, there is a bill that's still out there right now that, as of this recording, is still being discussed in the Senate. Now, does it go very far? Not as far as I like. I mean, they are raising the age from 18 to 21 to buy semi-automatic weapons. For juveniles, the age thing's out. I apologize. The age part has not been put in there. They're putting in there a juvenile record to do a review of juveniles who purchase firearms to see if there are any red flags. They are actually introducing red flag laws, but it still doesn't go far enough because in that bill there are some things missing. Raising the age from 18 to 21. I still have to ask this question: what 18-year-old needs to buy a gun? I still ask that question. Why, when you turn 18, when usually you go reaching for a drink at 18, you know you're not supposed to, but let's be honest, you know who you are. You know, when you're 18, you should be reaching for a gun. You should be reaching for a college application, things of that nature. But you shouldn't have to go. But again, to be able to buy a gun but not buy alcohol makes no sense. I also said about universal background checks. I see universal background checks should be done everywhere. Contrary to popular belief, they're not being done everywhere. They're not being done with private sales. They're not being done at gun night shows. They're only being done commercially, which means that your Cabela's, your Academies, your other stores that sell firearms, that's where commercial sales are running background checks. Everywhere else, none. Correct me if I'm wrong. But again, this goes to show you how badly that we really, really need to have considerable gun law registration and reform. It's beyond the point now. It really is. But moving forward, guys, again, to dip in religion a little bit, because I cannot believe that this is actually a headline that Massachusetts middle school cannot be called Catholic after flying gay pride and Black Lives Matter flags. Yes, I wish I could make this up. A school could no longer be called Catholic because, according to them, the Catholic faith, which again is still funny to me. It's still funny the way I look at religion, but they said that the Bishop Robert J. Magnus, quote unquote, I stated publicly in open letter that these symbols embody specific agendas or ideologies that contradict Catholic social and moral teaching. It is my contention that the gay pride flag represents support of gay marriage and actively living an LGBTQ lifestyle. This is also true of Black Lives Matter, that the Catholic Church teaches that all life is sacred, and the Church certainly stands unequivocally behind the phrase Black Lives Matter and strongly affirms that all lives matter. Yes. Now, of course, this school does not get funding from the Catholic Church, but it's just interesting when they sit there and tell them, "Oh, you can't call yourselves Catholic. You can't call yourself." I'm like, the Catholic Church and their history of priests sexually abusing children, and you guys are saying all lives matter. Yeah, somewhere the Pope and the Vatican is probably telling this bishop to honestly, shh. I'm almost certain of it. But it always seems to amaze me. Why do y'all think there's agendas? There's not, the funny thing I always want to say, there's not an agenda behind everything. Sometimes it just needs to be said. I have no problem flying a pride flag. It's Pride Month. It's Pride Month. I have plenty of relatives who are LGBTQ plus. No problem. I love them all the same because they choose to live a life different than me doesn't mean they don't deserve love and care and respect to be treated like a freaking decent human being. They deserve all that and more. But it amazes me so. How many people sit there and go, "Well, that's just not natural. That's not natural. That's not the way God intended." How do you know? Well, because the Bible told me. Oh, you mean that document that's being remixed so many times that P. Diddy probably has a credit to it? it never ceases to me the robotic response that you get from when people tell that. And even more so, again, this is the reason why I say about, especially as kids, if you teach kids social awareness at an early age, they become better adults. They don't turn gay just because you teach them that there are people out there different than you. Don't believe me? People have been watching. You know, the funny part is, and I use this analogy all the time. If reading and learning about LGBTQ at a young age turns you, then what have I been doing for like the last 20 years where Black people have influenced every aspect of life? I mean, your kids talk Black, you didn't stop them. Your kids dress Black, you didn't stop them. Your kids went to Black HBCUs, you didn't stop them. At the same time, you basically emulated and imitated everything that we've done. I didn't see you throwing your hands up and going, oh, this is against our religion because it's Black. Just goes to show you the bullshit. And especially with the Black Lives Matter, it's like, and I hear that all the time. That's why I sit there and say this all the time. That every time I hear all lives matter,
negotiations on
well, not yet. Every time I hear all lives matter, I just want to sit there and go, how much bullshit it really is. Because if you truly care, if all lives matter cared, you'd be protesting every war. You would be shouting your frustration at every shooting. You would be sitting there being angry about every tragedy. You would sit there and be angry about any time there is loss of life, since all lives matter. But no, just like Blue Lives Matter, I didn't hear one Blue Lives Matter when the cop testified, when the Capitol police officers testified on January 6th hearing. Where were the Fraternal Order police then? Where were Blue Lives Matter then? Nowhere to be found. But you know when they always pop up? Because they have to be inclusive. Those people that believe all lives matter will always have to be. It's a me too when it comes to hashtags. Because we've been saying for years that Black lives didn't matter, and the fact that we kept saying it put immediately guilt, because who's usually the perpetrators of Black lives being lost? White people. Some white people feel guilty enough to say all lives matter because what they really want to say is, oh, we matter too. We just want to be included. Tell me if I'm wrong. And I'm just saying it's one of those where I sit there and I'm just going, you have to. It's amazing where I say a lot of this you just simply cannot make up. But as we're talking about gun laws, guys, let's also forget the other thing, not just that firearms need to be regulated, body armor. Because body armor is a very, very unregulated market. And that should also be seen because the last couple of shooters that tried to do mass shootings had on tactical body armor. But the question needs to be asked, does body armor also need to be regulated and licensed just as firearms are? I believe so.
As Washington continues negotiations on legislation to address gun violence, we wanted to take a closer look at the use of body armor, which has become more commonplace by mass shooters in the past decade, with military-style tactical gear making it harder for law enforcement to take down active shooters. Why is such gear readily available, and should it be more strictly regulated? ABC's Mary Alice Parks files this report.
One of the many devastating details of the mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, was that retired officer Aaron Salter Jr. confronted the shooter, but was not able to stop him.
He legally purchased a military-style weapon and body armor.
Testifying on Capitol Hill, Buffalo Police Commissioner Joseph Gramalia said Salter was the proverbial good guy with a gun, but he had no chance considering the shooter's gear.
Did that make the shooting even more deadly?
Absolutely, it did. Officer Salter, who was working in top security that day, he engaged a shooter. He got off numerous shots, and one of those shots hit the tactical armor that the shooter was wearing. That would have ended it, and it didn't, and he was able to continue on.
The Violence Project, a nonpartisan research center that studies gun violence in America, found that at least 21 times in the last 40 years, a mass shooter has worn body armor during their attacks. Many of those deadly instances coming in the past decade, including in Sutherland Springs, Texas, San Bernardino, California, and Aurora, Colorado. Author and journalist Mark Folman, who has covered mass shootings in America for more than a decade, says the trend is increasing.
It's also a point of emulation behavior. Shooters looking to previous attackers for inspiration and wanting to be like them.
Bill for side.
After the Buffalo shooting, the state of New York quickly passed a new law trying to ban the possession of tactical body armor, but some experts worry it was written too narrowly to include the type the shooter used. Besides the new law in New York and others in Connecticut and the city of Chicago, there is almost no other regulation around the sale of body armor or other tactical gear. At the federal level, it is against the law for felons convicted of violent crimes to buy such gear. But in practice, military-grade armor and helmets can be purchased online and delivered in days to almost anyone.
You have a recipe for more of this kind of offensive attack in the hands of relatively few people, but enough to do terrible damage, as we just saw again with these recent mass shootings.
It saved your life.
It saved my life, absolutely, yes.
Dr. Aaron Westrick, a former Michigan sheriff who also worked as a research director for a body armor company, told me he was appalled to hear that the Buffalo shooter was wearing body armor.
It just makes me feel sick. I feel awful about it. And that's not the purpose of armor. It's not to protect the bad guys.
Westrick describes a subculture of gun enthusiasts who say they want to be combat ready, and accessories, including body armor, are marketed directly to them as a part of this. He worries about an arms race between law enforcement and civilians.
I personally would like to see more regulation and at least self-imposed regulation by the body armor industry itself to make sure the citizens that are buying it are verified.
Fulman agrees, noting there could be fewer barriers to regulating body armor sales compared to guns.
There's nothing in the Constitution that talks about a right to tactical gear. But that said, if we understand that this is becoming an element in this problem, that it's increasing the danger in mass shootings and other forms of planned violence, then it does raise a real question about whether or not it should be regulated more stringently.
But others in the industry argue that mass shootings have increased the need for body armor to be accessible to the public. In the parking lot of a gun show outside Philadelphia last weekend, we find Keith Barrett.
You have concealed and tactical.
He runs one of the largest body armor retail companies on the East Coast. He walks us through the range of gear he sells.
This has level 4 plates in it.
Okay.
Level 4 is the highest level you can wear. Ceramic will stop pretty much every round out of a small arms rifle.
From this full military style kit.
If you were to put this on.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the weight's here and here.
Exactly.
To one like many police officers wear, intended to be concealable, more comfortable.
This will stop all rounds fired out of pistol and shotgun up to about 1,800 feet per second.
To this.
This clearly has a certain market. I mean, you are hitting a demographic. This is pink camo.
It's just camo.
Costs can range from the hundreds to the thousands of dollars.
You can take this panel out when you don't want to wear the shirt and put this in your backpack or computer bag and have an armored backpack or armored computer bag.
Are people thinking like that?
Yes.
Barrett, who served in the Army before having a career as a state trooper, dismisses the idea that armor makes it harder for law enforcement, arguing that officers need better training and more firepower to respond to active shooters. And he tells us he's seen a demographic shift at gun shows like these. With more violence in U.S. cities, he says a wider range of people of all ages are looking for protective gear.
You're getting younger people, more Democrats. They're purchasing guns, magazines, training, armor, all the above. One of the most common sells is a parent or teacher that wants to have some type of protection. They'll buy the individual panel.
Have you actually sold something like that to a mom that said, I'm putting this in my kid's backpack?
Yeah, actually, often. That's very common. Yes. People are concerned about the operational and security environment at schools or public places in general. And if you're not authorized to carry or wear a gun to some of these places, what's your only option left? A piece of defensive equipment.
He tells us in his industry, there are no federally required background checks, meaning at gun shows like these, he is just taking people at their word.
You ever sold a vest to someone and you felt weird about it?
No. And we lose a lot of business because of that. One of the things we impress in our company is integrity. If you don't feel comfortable, don't sell it to them.
What do you say to someone who says the average civilian does not need to be able to buy a tactical vest like that?
All right, you define need. Tell the average lawmaker who lives in his $500,000 house to go down to the inner city and live in the environment where they're shooting at each other every day, and tell them they don't need body armor.
No city should have to go through this.
Despite those points, back on Capitol Hill, Buffalo Police Commissioner Gramalia tells me he supports the new law passed in New York and more outright bans, hoping to curb shootings like the one his officers had to confront.
Do you think it was a good model other states can learn from?
Yeah, I do support it. Why does the average citizen need to have body armor?
So that's a lot to take in. It is a lot to take in. But again, the crazy part is, yes, that aside from 3 states, there is no regulation on body armor. I mean, yours truly could go on Amazon or any other site and buy full-on level 4 body armor and be fine. Nobody will bat an eye. That's a problem. Now, I said it before, now I say this all the time because I have friends that work in security, protective services. I get it. That's a part of the job to have body armor, especially for the jobs and situations that they take on. I can't argue with them. Won't argue with them. They need that body armor. It is a level of protection that they need. And I will also sit there and be on the civilian side and say, yes, if you want body armor, you should be able to buy it. I will say this, though. The only way to actually combat, because we've seen this historically, we've seen this with tobacco, we've seen this with alcohol, we're starting to see this with marijuana. It isn't happening in every state, but it's happening. The thing about these dangers is that the only way that we've been able to not remove the danger, but mitigate it, is to legalize it and regulate it. That's how we've gotten past this. So what am I saying? I'm saying that body armor needs to be regulated just like firearms. I mean, I wouldn't want my kid walking around with a bulletproof backpack, but then again, I don't want them. But then again, it's a whole multi-layered problem. I see what the guy was saying. I mean, he's a businessman. He's going to reach out to his demographic. As the journalist pointed out, like, this is pink camo. You're targeting a certain demographic. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Just admit it, dude. You are targeting a certain demographic. I mean, not to say that a man doesn't want a pink rifle, but let's be honest. If you see a pink rifle, if you see a pink gun, guys may want it. But who's the demographic pointed to? Pink camo. Who's the demographic being pointed to? Come on now. But at the same time, guys, I have sat there and said this. It needs to be regulated. It needs to be regulated. There needs to be documentation. It needs, like I said, to handle the problem of gun reform, it needs to be handled on all sides, especially with violence in schools. That goes right back to public education. You slash that bill so many times until something happens, and then you infuse money into it. But from the body armor side of things, it can be regulated. I truly believe it can. And I believe it can be regulated. I believe it needs to be followed. It needs to be in the same. I mean, for body armor to be put on the same level as firearms, that you got to be a certain age, that you got to pass a background check. And again, that goes right back into those laws and rules that, again, we should have in place, because it won't remove the danger. It will mitigate it. And that's the goal, because we'll never, I mean, as far as the gun reform, I have come to this realization. We will never have the type of gun reform that's in New Zealand, that's in the UK, that's in Japan, that's in Australia. And they are strict. You want to talk about look up gun laws. If you ever get a chance, look up gun laws in Japan. You have to jump through several hoops, including a mental evaluation. Not only a physical evaluation, a mental evaluation has to be done. And then buying a license for gunpowder, buying a license for ammo, and then qualifying and taking a class every year. And if you don't do any of those things, you can't own it. And if you are caught owning a firearm in Japan illegally, that is 15 years minimum in a prison. No questions asked. I kid you not. These other countries are not playing. Japan is strict. Australia is strict on gun ownership. New Zealand, again, 2 years ago, passed their assault rifles ban and hasn't had a mass shooting since. Canada has put a freeze on buying firearms. Again, I don't think we'll ever get to that level, but I still think if we put these things in place, we'll actually have a better shot at mitigating these shootings from happening. That's just me. But moving along, guys, I did want to cover this next story because, again, yes, this weekend is Father's Day. So, again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers, grandfathers, stepdads, you guys are all fathers who have influenced and just stepped in and just been that role, been that pivotal. I can't find the words I want to say right now. That influential person in your child or family's life. So happy Father's Day to you. It's also Juneteenth. Who knew that in 2022 we can finally sit there and say Juneteenth? Juneteenth, one of the holidays, which again it's only been a year that Juneteenth is now a federally recognized holiday. For all those that know, Juneteenth is June the 19th because of the historical faction of when Union soldiers had came to a city in Texas to announce that the Emancipation Proclamation being created and slavery is abolished in the United States. Considering the fact that, of course, the South wanted to be dicks about it and not tell their slaves they were free, even though they lost the Civil War. But that's a historical lesson. The reason why we're bringing up Juneteenth is because, again, the HR 40 Commission. Now, for all those that don't know, the HR 40 Commission was put together to study reparations or the study of possible reparations to African Americans. Which, again, as you can see, this sign was actually being put up near the White House. That sat there and says, because they are bringing up a campaign promise that President Biden has sat there and said that they will look into the study of reparations. Now, again, I have sat there and said this a long time ago. Yes, reparations should have long since been looked into, even more so to where there needs to be a study put on it. Of course, if you listen to Fox News and every other conservative media, they'll sit there and say that not every black person would have came from slavery. If that's the case, what if a white person came from a slave family? Does that mean they're entitled to reparations as well? Again, it's a bullshit argument, but that's the one they keep arguing. That's the one they keep making arguments in conservative media. But President Biden did sit there and say that, yes, they are going to look into it. But again, this goes back into this whole thing.
Georgia Herschel
Walker. Not yet. Quite you. This goes back into this whole thing, like I've said before, of just, broken campaign promises. And I'm hoping Biden does keep this one because, yes, reparations need to be looked into. And people always say, do you think black people are reparations? 1,000 times yes. Because, again, we have seen the fact that one race has moved forward while one race is still at least 400 years behind, economically, financially, and educationally. That's the reason why, for a lot of black people, we always say the same thing. You got to work twice as hard to get half of what they got. Yes, that is true, unfortunately. But I still think that reparations can be looked into. I think the same way that the CDC should be allowed to look into gun violence. But it's amazing that currently, right now, the Mayo out there, especially conservatives, are preventing both things from happening. I'm just wondering why. Because they already want, these are the same people that wanted to ban CRT, that's not being taught in any school, by the way. Even though DeSantis swears up and down that CRT is in books when really they're not. But it's amazing. They want to ban CRT, which isn't being taught over law school. You want to ban reparations. Why? Because that means you're going to really have a look at slavery. Again, I never understood, why are we sitting there, people have this, some people have such this patriotic pride of America, but not forgetting the fact that America has a whole lot of dark parts. Dark, sketchy, gruesome, not as fine as our. But for the life of me, we don't want to consider that maybe, just maybe, there may be some truth to reparations. And if so, what does that mean? We know that the U.S. has had a history of paying reparations to different minorities, but it's almost like they don't want to admit that maybe black people are pretty much owed to. We built this country, we built the White House, we built the Washington Monument. You think for 1 second it's don't you think you need to pay for past services rendered? I think so. But we'll find out whether or not that Biden does actually follow through with this. Because like I said, the man is fighting a war on all fronts. But unfortunately, like I said before, if you're not Ukraine and you're not a corporation, you're not going to get a lot of help. And I hate to say this because so many progressive Democrats like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Bernie Sanders have all sit there and said that reparations need to happen. But President Biden and executive order would go a long way. That's all I'm saying. But speaking of Republicans, guys, this is kind of funny, but at the same time, I'm not surprised by this. But it's always amazing that the party of family values always get caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Herschel Walker being one of them. Not only for the simple fact this man lied about graduating from college, lied about actually doing law enforcement. now is saying, this was the guy that was talking about absentee fathers and how deadbeat dads. And who knew that the person that was doing that much crowing had 4 kids out there that basically he was an absentee dad too. So hypocrite much?
Republican Senate candidate in Georgia, Herschel Walker, a vocal critic of absentee fathers, tonight now acknowledging he has a 10-year-old he did not raise. Steve Osunsami from Georgia.
Let me hear Herschel Walker.
For years, he has repeatedly criticized black men who leave their children. But tonight, Georgia's Republican nominee for U.S. Senate, Herschel Walker, is admitting that he has a 10-year-old son who he didn't raise. Court documents show that the boy's mother had to sue him for paternity and child support in 2013.
Even if you have to leave that woman, you don't leave the child.
So Herschel, please say a few words.
Walker, who is running with the strong support of former President Donald Trump, regularly complains about absent black fathers.
The problem we have is we're going back to this mentality that the father leaves in the black family. He leaves and leaves the boys alone, so they'll be raised by the mom.
In a statement tonight, Walker's campaign says he had a child years ago when he wasn't married and that he supported the child and continues to do so. The Heisman Trophy winner won the hearts of Georgians during his college football days. He won the Republican primary last month with nearly 70% of the vote, despite allegations over past domestic violence and his struggle with multiple personalities. He was recently caught lying about graduating from college and working in law enforcement. In November, he faces the sitting senator, Democrat Raphael Warnock.
Walker's campaign points out that his opponent, the sitting senator, is currently in a bitter fight with his ex-wife over their child custody arrangement. But Senator Warnock's people today say what's different in his case is that he's always been a devoted father. David?
Ooh. Oh, that's always fun. I find it amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I find it utterly amazing that the GOP, the party of small values, has always caught with somebody. Whether, it's amazing the same people who are against LGBTQ rights as far as regulations and certain rules and policies and procedures go that they voted against, who they get caught with? An LGBTQ person. The same person that sits there is, they're the same ones that are caught with, younger individuals or caught in extramarital affairs. Or my personal favorite, deadbeat person that calls out deadbeat dads is literally a deadbeat dad. The party of small values, indeed. That's all I'm saying. But also another story I want to switch to because again, Florida seems to be the king of the whole my beer championship 3 years running. Is that this is the reason why I'm always scared to be a parent, because I'm always afraid that my children will come back on a phone call and something like this happens. Because if that ever happened to my kids, or if that ever happened to any of my kids, I'd probably be in jail for what these two individuals did to a bunch of teenagers.
52-year-old Donald Corsi and 61-year-old Howard Hughes face criminal charges after deputies say they attacked 2 teenage boys who were driving through their Lake Forest neighborhood in Sanford Tuesday night.
Right here, buddy. Right here. Tell them what you were doing.
This cell phone video of the confrontation was recorded by 16-year-old Jermaine Jones, who had been driving the white Mercedes. He had a 15-year-old passenger, and according to the teens, they were headed to a friend's house to spend the night when the 2 men yelled at them for speeding. After the teens turned the car around to leave the area, they say the men forced them to stop and attacked.
Burning out racing through my neighborhood. Burning out racing through my neighborhood. Not to. I'm not in your face. Get out of my neighborhood.
The teens say the men dented their car with a traffic cone and threw a rock through the back window. The arrest affidavit also says Hughes used the cone to hit one of the teens in the stomach. Jones's parents told West 2 News over the phone, while their son admits he was speeding, the men had no right to attack.
They could have simply called the police. They could have done anything, but the audacity of them to think that they could just do what they wanted to do because it's their neighborhood, is what they said. Get out of my neighborhood.
Jones's parents have obtained an attorney and want the men to face more serious charges.
I personally was appalled and disgusted I cannot believe that in 2022 that grown men would treat a child this way. I really couldn't believe it. And this was all because of the color of his skin.
In Seminole County, Amanda Dukes reports.
And that just goes to show you, because like I said before, if that was my child, if my child called me and said, these guys stopped the car, got in my face, if I even heard the sentence, one of them put their hands on me, I'm asking where you at. I'm in the car. I'm 1 foot in the car, ignition, tell me where you are. Because it's amazing, these two men, I mean, like I said before, you're not the police. And there are some white people, some Karens. We gotta figure out a male name. We gotta figure out a male Karen name for a white guy. I'll think of one because we're so used to Karens and the final form Doloreses. We don't really get a lot of male ones. So we'll think of one. But anyway, if my child had turned around and told me that these two white men are costing them, yeah, I'm gonna go to jail. I'm gonna go to jail. I would tell my wife, like, honey, remember that bail money or that bail bonds we keep on retainer? I'm gonna need him because you're not the police. That's the first thing I mean. The first thing I would say to those two white dudes, first off, you're not the fucking police. Second of all, those are children. And if you think for 1 second that you can damage their car and then put your hands on those kids, well, they were speeding. Call the police. What are you going to do with a speeding car? Call the police. Yes, if my child admitted they were speeding, yes, it was stupid. But again, you're not the police. You don't get to come out and do drive-by parenting and keep them from leaving. It's one thing to complain about them speeding, sure. But when you keep them from leaving, okay, we basically went up to attempted kidnapping. Because now you're trying to stop them from leaving for no reason. And now we got to damage property. You shattered a window. You damaged the car. Now we jump to assault because you used a cone to attack one of my children. Yeah, I'm going to go to jail. Because, again, it amazes me that audacity is at an all-time high. It really is. For the simple fact of the matter, it's just that how in the world are we at this level to where some white folks feel so entitled that they can just go ahead and be like, oh, well, I'm just going to do it because they do it from a place of safety. That's what they really do it from. And I know for me, you can get in my face if you want to from a place of safety. You'll find out very quickly that you're not. But again, they were arraigned and arrested, so hopefully charges will follow because they do need to be hit with a book. But it's Florida, DeSantis country, so we'll see what happens there. But as you guys know, the Federal Reserve, as of this week, did hike up the rates to about 0.75%, which makes a lot of things a little bit hard to get. Credit card interest rates will go up. Borrowing money will become slightly more. Car loans may or may not get accepted as much. But on the other side of it, mortgages and home loans, because we are seeing right now a lot of these companies that actually have a large amount of capital are buying up a lot of houses that are making it difficult for the American dream to basically be had by those you and me of the middle and lower classes.
For years, John and Angie Collier saved.
Oh, this is nice.
Eager to buy a first home in Fishers, Indiana, attracted by the good schools and proximity to work. But pursuing the American dream has proved daunting.
Oh, sorry, outbid.
Fishers, named by Money Magazine one of the best places to live, is part of a national trend as real estate investment groups buy up houses in cash and rent them out, in some cases, to the very families who dreamed of owning them. In January, 33% of all homes purchased in the U.S. were bought by investors, often Wall Street-backed companies with multi-billion-dollar funds. The Colliers currently rent in a town near Fishers from one of the nation's biggest house rental companies. Their rent recently raised 8%.
Good to see you. Come on in.
4 times in recent weeks, they've been outbid by investors with all cash offers.
It can be, discouraging when you get overbid by, companies.
How do you save when you're spending $2,200 a month just to rent?
So these companies have you on both ends.
Yeah, it's definitely a conundrum.
In some Fishers neighborhoods, investors own more than half of the homes, according to realtor Laura Turner.
This is one of the neighborhoods that investors have really targeted. They're coming in, they're buying it at cash, and then they're going to hold them as rentals.
Fisher's mayor, Scott Fadness, is frustrated by the surge of distant, faceless landlords.
Have you been able to talk to any of these companies?
It's very difficult. So take, for instance, if you have a high grass and weed issue, a code enforcement issue, I mean, if they own 4,000 homes, who is the individual that you can go talk to about a specific problem?
In a statement, the National Rental Home Council said NRHC member companies own just a fraction of the homes throughout the state of Indiana, and that its 5 largest member companies maintain an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau. Builder Steve Lanes argues rental companies aren't taking away possibilities from families, but in many cases, creating them.
There are a segment of people who are no longer able to buy a home because they can't afford that home, but they don't want to be in an apartment. They're looking for those opportunities to rent in those communities.
After getting outbid time and again, the Colliers say they've given up on Fishers.
Is the American dream still accessible?
I think the American dream is changing. Our society may be going in that direction where we are getting further away from ownership, but I don't think it's the right direction.
I love the screened-in porch.
They've put in a bid on a home in a town farther out. Their American dream modified, not broken. Antonia Hilton, NBC.
Well, like the great George Carlin once said, and I quote, you have to be, it's like the American dream is that a dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. Now, I'm not surprised by this because here in Tennessee, the same thing. You do have investors from Wall Street, from up north that are coming down here and they're buying up property by the freaking boatload. Does that make things difficult? Yes, because prices have driven up. And I've never understood this, that the fact that, prices increase so dramatically because yes, Nashville being a so-called it city where maybe 2,000 to 5,000 people a day are moving here, they are moving here remotely from areas with higher salaries. So, I mean, yay that the remote to work thing is becoming a trend, but that's what they're banking on. They're banking on those higher salaries to move here and therefore increase the rent, increase prices as attractiveness. But at the same time, but again, I've said there and said this before, here's the problem that you're going to run into, that renting is a self-generating business. Renting, again, and I've said this so many times, is a self-generating business, which means that as long as I got you on the hook, I'm guaranteed income every month as long as you have a job. And if you don't have a job or you can't pay the rent, then of course I evict you. I bring someone else in. We start the whole cycle again. I'm still getting money because I still own it. A lot of companies realize that yes, we can constantly get money out of renters than we will of owners. Because if you own something, then unless something happens that puts you in a financial distraught, you won't borrow against the equity of your home. You won't take on a second mortgage or do a reverse mortgage or any of this other things that are out there. Because the fact of the matter is, you have something that's of worth. You could even sell it if you want to. So that's why I say the whole homeownership thing has changed, because companies have realized that, yes, we can go in and we can purchase these homes, rent them out. And again, because the life of me, how banks operate. And if you're a banker watching this, I would love to learn this because I've said this all the time. How is it that, let's just say, for instance, I'll use myself. How is it that I could pay $1,100 a month on a 24-month lease, but you need me to pay you anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 down to prove that I can pay a mortgage of $1,100 a month? Or $1,100 or $1,200 a month. I still want to know that. For the life of me, it still doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm not trying to feign ignorance. I am literally asking for understanding. Because if I could pay faithfully $1,100 a month on a 24-month lease in an apartment, why in the world does the bank need to see at least 9 to 10 times the amount of money that I'm paying to prove that I could do the same thing in a house? That's the one. Then I guess that's the one question that we're asking all these banks. Because if you ever been through mortgages or first time homeowner lendership, I know for a lot of them they usually have a zero down. They usually have a low down payment and things of that nature, and that's cool. That does help people get into homes. But again, the problem is that the revenue stream is geared toward renters, and yeah, that's the reason why renting a home has never been a good idea to me, because you're basically it's like renting a home is like having an apartment. You're basically throwing money away every month. That money does not accumulate to anything. That money does not help you out in the long run. It just shows you that you can get a bigger place, but you also have additional utilities that aren't the same as if you had an apartment, where the apartment could have additional utilities built into the price. Again, renting is a revenue stream. And right now, a lot of companies are seeing that. And yes, does that kill the American dream? To some extent, yes. Because even here in Nashville, everything is double or triple their value, especially in land. Like trying to live in Nashville right now, anywhere in the remote area of Nashville, homes that are usually low threes, maybe high twos, are now mid fours and high fives. It's New York. It's New York pricing down south. I wish I could make that up. But at the same time, yes, the American dream of owning a home has become more difficult in 2022. I don't see it getting any better in 2023 unless there is some regulation that's put in place where banks have to basically come down this high horse that I have to pay $5 to $10 down a month just to prove I can pay $1,100 a month, which I've been doing faithfully in an apartment where I've been paying $1,100 a month. A little bit of a rant. I apologize, but anyway, we're gonna go into our feel good segment because usually how the Frack guy here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you lose faith in humanity, but hey, it's the weekend. Depending on where you are, you're still on God's hot plate, which means it's probably still about 100 200 degrees. So hopefully, you guys are staying cool, staying hydrated, staying safe because nobody wants to feel sunstroke or pass out. But we do want to leave you guys out on some good vibes, and hopefully, these next 3 stories will do that. The first one, because I love seeing, and I'm unapologetically black. I love seeing black people succeed. And again, this young man is no exception. This Alabama teen right here accepted to 15 schools with $2 million in scholarships. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Rotimi Kwekwe. I'm hoping I got that right, and if not, I apologize. Has been accepted to 15 universities, including Harvard's and Johns Hopkins, and awarded more than $2 million in school and $2 million scholarship offers. He is also the first Black merit scholar at his school from Hoover, Alabama. And again, he also was on Jeopardy, which I did not know, Jeopardy in the teen tournament, as he's seen there with the late, great Alex Trebek. But again, I just love seeing stories like this to where, again, getting into college is already tough. But at the same time, to be accepted with $2 million in scholarships, again, I'm just happy to see black people make it. That's just me. And congrats and good luck to that young man. The next story I did cover during the midweek. Review, which again, who doesn't like roller skating? Who doesn't like getting down when the music's playing and then you get those dudes out there or those groups out there that almost damn near dance on skates? Well, this duo of brothers do exactly that and actually bring a lot of joy to where we honestly need something to laugh and feel good about.
When soon as you step on the floor, like you ascend into another dimension. Like you're not thinking about anything. No hard times in life. You're not thinking about none of that. It's just you and your skates. And it's like you're just floating on a cloud in your own world. That's exactly what it feels like.
I get a lot of messages about how we inspire people to get back on the floor.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
I get a lot of messages, and I talk to people every single day.
So our mom was actually the original skater. She used to go when she was younger. Her mom used to drop her off at the rink, and she would skate all night. So she did the exact same thing with us. We just literally just want to bring joy and happiness to everybody who lays eyes on us.
And honestly, I'm not mad about that because the fact of the matter is, I always love seeing people that can do that stuff, or especially if you're on the skating rink or the DJ go, then now it's an all skate. And of course, depending on the songs they be playing, because you hear Atomic Dog, you're looking for cues. What? Just me? I'm the only one who looks. Nothing wrong with cues out there, but let's be honest, when y'all hear Atomic Dog, it's like y'all come out of nowhere. But again, I just thought that was pretty cool because who doesn't like skating? I mean, I was more of a speed skater. I never learned to really do moves and stuff while I was skating, but if you can do it, kudos. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with a skating rink. It's always a feel-good time. And I like to see people that just want to add to joy in the world, because Lord knows we can use a lot of it. The last story I got, guys, is about a man that can't be seen who, again, just seems to be spreading joy wherever he goes. John Cena.
Prize of a lifetime from superstar John Cena doing something truly. Back now with all the details on this very sweet story. Good morning again, Maggie.
Hey, good morning, Lara. Yeah, it's hard not to just smile when you hear this story. John Cena was in Europe for work when he says he just knew we had to make the quick trip to Amsterdam to meet one of his biggest fans. And, well, Lara, it turned into a life-changing moment for both of them.
I cherish peace with all my heart.
Known for super-powered action on the big screen.
Costume. This is a uniform.
And in the ring. Now, when their home in Mariupol was destroyed, his family had to flee. The trip was tough on Misha, who is nonverbal with Down syndrome. To keep him going, his mom Liana told Misha they were on their way to see his hero, John Cena, out in John Cena's You Can't See Me gear.
Wow, Misha John.
Even
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. But again, I cannot like John Cena. But the fact that, no one could see him for 5 minutes. Too soon? Too soon. Anyway, that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. And we'll also, like I said before, if you like to comment on anything that we discussed or any of the stories that are brought up, please feel free. I'm all for open discussion. Before I do get out of here, guys, I do want to do some shameless plugging. I do want to first and foremost shout out my boy Big BZA Dot. You can definitely find him, Avon Westwood on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on socials, where you see his shows there and his random pop-ups on Instagram. Definitely check him out. As far as yours truly, guys, I can be seen IG handle BlackBox447 on Instagram, where you can follow me there. I usually post reviews of movies, television shows, video games, and also gym stuff sometimes, because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, I am all about positivity and just moving forward and just really trying to motivate others, because like I said, we've had a rough couple of rough sometimes now, and really we need some more positive. We need to uplift each other. We need to celebrate each other's wins. We just need to be kinder. That's my whole thing. Yes, it sounds corny, but I believe it, damn it. Well, we do need to be kinder. You don't know what someone else is going through in their lives. You don't know what they're running into, whether it be family, whether it be mental health. The thing about it is just being kind and being decent, because you don't know what you know by saying hi or hello or checking on somebody that you might do more than just, up with their spirits. You might actually save a life. So again, let's try to be kind to each other. Let's try to be decent. Even to the brothers. Brothers, say hi to each other. There's nothing wrong with saying what's up to another black dude. I do it all the time. I didn't always used to, but I realized at this point life is too short, and I should be able to acknowledge my fellow brethren. But I try to do better about that. Aside from that, guys, like I said, coronavirus is still around. So please, oh please, please wear a mask in high traffic areas. Please, above all else, watch out for yourselves. If you're feeling sick, please keep yourself isolated, because the sooner we get out of this, the sooner we'll be better off, even though a lot of people still sit there and say that they're not going to get it. But hey, that's on you. You're going to find out differently when everyone else does it. Also, guys, clicking, you can basically take that link, copy and paste it into your browser. We'll take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack Got Here, Get Bid, and of course, Alpha Month's podcast, where you can like and share and let other people know about us, what we're doing. I would certainly appreciate it. So, the last thing I say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds or reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information to allow you to make up your own mind, but we provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better than we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first black woman to Supreme Court, to elect our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, to electing our first woman as one of the first leading commanders in the United States Navy. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, guys, why does everything go up but our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thank you all for watching. And if you watch this on playback, please comment. I still want to know what you guys think. And also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, guys. Aside from that, take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through this. Peace.